Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to all of those of us from different parts of the world. So today we are doing the Compelling Vision for Change, TOT, and we have with us the Kenya team. So Anne has mentioned that with her we have, sorry, I'm just trying to, we have Pet, Anthony, Beryl, Derek, and of course Anne. And then I see we also have Peterson on the line. And also with us today, we have Ellen, who is going to be one of our facilitators. We're also hoping that Dekazi from Rwanda will be able to join, but she'll lead us off. And then also from the HQ side, we have our new senior project officer, Petra Michael. So she is joining in today just to learn a little bit more about DOT and our programs through this TOT. So we are recording this, and the link will be shared to the YouTube video afterwards. So without further ado, I will hand things over to Ellen, who will take us through this TOT.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Great. Well, good morning from my side and good afternoon to the rest of you. I believe I've met many of you, but some of you I have not. So I work with the learning team or the program development team on developing the social innovation programming for the YLP. I've been doing this work with DOT over the last, it's almost 2 years now. So it's been great to see these programs getting started and rolling out in each of your countries. So I know that the Kenya team, you guys are going to be launching or have already launched, which is very exciting, and are going to be delivering the Compelling Vision for Change workshop very soon. So we wanted to take an opportunity to go through the workshop content another time with you all, and also go through the submission that is required for the Compelling Vision for Change workshop. So we will do both of those sections. What I would ask is that you all have the facilitator guide or the workshop guide open and can be following along. I'm also going to share my screen and hope that that doesn't interrupt the quality of the call, but if it does, we will stop it. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so you should all be able to see the workshop guide on my screen now. Oh, Anne, you lost me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. And are you able to see the workshop guide?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so the Compelling Vision for Change is a 2-day face-to-face workshop. It contains a lot of content from previous DOT programs. So it's a nice starting point because you will likely be a bit more familiar with the content. If you have delivered Reach Up previously, you should be familiar with some of the content. And the 2 days really focus on empowerment. So it's the first day is really an empowerment session. The second day is starting to get the young leader to think about the social impact project that they would like to continue to work on for the rest of the YLP. So as you all know, any young leader that's in the youth leadership program will be working on some type of community impact project no matter what stream of the program or track of the program they go through. And so whether they're a digital champion or a social innovator or a community leader, this workshop is the starting point where they're going to begin to think about, what impact do I want to have in the community? So it's an important sort of stage setting workshop. And at the end of the workshop, it is the first sort of standardized submission that they will put in to your team through the Learn DOT platform. And that submission your team will mark, and they will need to receive 70% or higher on that submission in order to continue in the YLP. So this is also after this workshop is the first opportunity where you're really assessing, are these young leaders all a good fit for this program, or are some maybe not the best fit for the program and so won't continue on. But I will get right into the content. So day one is really focused, like I said, on empowerment, and you'll notice a lot of the Reach Up content in here. So the very first part of the day, of course, is a welcome and facilitator and workshop introduction. So I know that you are doing induction trainings with the young leaders. And so some of this content around, an introduction to DOT's mission, vision, and programs might be slightly repetitive, but because, the mission and vision of DOT is so important to the way that this program is developed, it's a great idea to review it again. So all of the content here is the content directly from the new sort of DOT branding, your vision and mission, as well as some of those values included in there. So great opportunity to review those. As well, at this point, the facilitator would want to prepare a personal introduction in advance. So just making sure that you're ready to introduce yourself. The next activity is an icebreaker. And the icebreaker is familiar if you have delivered Reach Up. This icebreaker is important to other elements of the workshop. And so you'll want to follow this icebreaker fairly closely. So what the icebreaker has participants do is think about their passions, so the things that they're passionate about in life. They're going to individually write down things that they're passionate about on sticky notes. It's really important that they only write one passion per sticky note. And they can use one or two words to describe that passion. And then they'll write their name at the bottom of that sticky note. So once everyone has done that, they are going to bring them up to a large chart paper where they'll place all of their passions. And then they're going to start to look for connections between those passions. So they're going to look for any other passions that match their own and draw a line between those. So really the goal of this is to, first of all, get the young leaders starting to think about, what they are passionate about, because we hope that they work on a project throughout the course of the YLP that they feel passion for. The second goal is to start building connections in the room. So starting to recognize that within the room, there's people who have similar interests, similar passions as you. And building those connections and starting off with those connections is a great way to start to build relationships that will last throughout the rest of the YLP, hopefully, but particularly for the rest of the workshop. And here there's some debrief questions. So how many connections were you able to make to your sticky notes? Do you think there's many or few? What were some of the differences or similarities? How does knowing others' passions change how you are connected? What passions did you see others post that you share but didn't post yourself? So there's 7 questions here. I would suggest that you can pick. You don't need to do all 7 debrief questions. You can probably pick 4 or 5. And also remembering, because this is an icebreaker, there's only about 30 minutes allocated to it. And so when you are doing the debrief, you will not have time to have everyone speak during that debrief or answer every question. So just be conscious of the time. This is a very full workshop, and there's a lot of opportunities for everyone to contribute. But just at the icebreaker, not everyone will be able to answer every question of the debrief. You won't have time for that. So any questions about that icebreaker? I'm just going to flip back to the chat. While I'm going through, you can feel free to put a question in the chat box or just to unmute yourself and speak up. I'm happy to just have you interrupt. Looks like no questions for now. Okay, so activity 2 is a gender activity, gender in your context. So at this point of the first unit of the YLP, the participants, the young leaders will have already completed their first online gender course. So that online gender course, some of you may have already seen because it is live, and I think a couple of you did QA on it. So the gender online course asks the young leaders to, sorry, Anne, just seeing your comment, the path mark is 70% for this one. Every other course or every other submission in the YLP is 80%, but because this one is so early on, it is a 70% pass. So, sorry, the gender in your context activity here builds off of the content that is in the gender online course. So if you have not looked at that gender online course, it would be a really good idea to look at it before you facilitate the Compelling Vision for Change workshop. What that online course that was designed by Kate asks the young leaders to do is go out into their community and observe gender behaviors. And so they will have already done that. They will have already done that observation, and they are being asked here in the Compelling Vision for Change workshop to discuss those observations in broader groups. So this will give them an opportunity to compare their observations to the observations of their peers, and potentially, depending on how your Compelling Vision for Change is set up, maybe they're sharing their stories with people from different communities or different parts of the country. And so there might be opportunity to really deepen their learning and understanding about kind of gender norms or gender issues in different places. So this part of the Compelling Vision for Change workshop is 2 hours. And it, like I said, it builds right off of that online course. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to start off by forming pairs. So everyone is going to partner up, and they're going to partner up with someone who is the same gender as them. So 2 men or 2 women will partner up. At this point, you don't want them to be mixing genders in the pairs. They'll do that later. So they're going to start off by sharing their own research, their own observations that they completed during the online course. And then their partner will share theirs. They're going to take 10 minutes each to discuss those. And then they are going to, they're going to take 10 minutes as a pair to discuss those, so 5 minutes each. Then at the end of sharing, they're going to combine their sets of observations into one new shared story. So the goal is to bring together common themes, the sort of dominant themes from each of their stories, and combine those into one story that they can then share together. Then they're going to pair up with a partnership that is the opposite gender, and they're going to share their new combined stories. So each pair will share their new combined story, and then once again, that group of 4 is going to try to create a combined story with all of the sort of dominant themes, the common themes, the important points from each of the each of the pair stories. So you're going from individual stories to pair stories to a story that 4 people are telling. And then that story that the 4 developed is going to be shared with the rest of the room. So they're going to share it with all of the peers in the room. So the goal of this, as you can imagine, is to, pull out what are those, to find commonalities in stories, but also to find dominant themes, to draw conclusions together, to pull out, what are the kind of key elements from the observations that we have, and then get them to a point where they can be shared with the rest of the room. And the debrief is, 5 questions. Again, likely not everyone can answer every question, but these bottom sort of 3 questions, I think, are quite important, particularly how has your perspective on gender changed? Just thinking about how these stories and sharing these stories has impacted their perspective on gender. Any questions about that activity? So it may be worthwhile as well in advance of the CVC to ask the participants to bring in their observations, bring in the research that they did. And the other thing that I can actually check, just in case they don't bring it in, they were asked in that gender course to submit their observations, and it may be submitted into their portfolio on the Learn Dot site. Is everyone familiar with their portfolio? And is your group familiar with the My Portfolio function on the Learn platform? Can you guys hear me? Okay, so you can hear me. And if you can just write in the chat if your group is familiar with the portfolio function. Okay. Well, if it is saved into their portfolio, they would be able to access it on their mobile device during the session. So I will confirm that. And then I will also confirm that you've all been given an orientation to the My Portfolio section of the Learn site. Because just in case someone doesn't bring a copy of their observations from that gender work, that would be a great way. If they just have their mobile device, they'd be able to pull it up and still participate very actively. Okay, so the next activity is a 1-hour activity, and it is called Discovering Opportunities for Impact. So when we talk about opportunities for impact, we are reframing the idea of social or environmental problems. So they're identifying, really what they're doing is identifying community needs or social or environmental problems that they would like to work on and try to, build a project that addresses those problems. Whoops. So, oh, you have a question. And we can't hear you. Do you want to put the question in the chat? Okay, I will keep going, but either the young people have been asked to submit what they have observed in the field. Yes. Yes, was that the question, or is there a second part? So during the CVC training, will they come with a copy of what they have submitted? Right, so this was what I was just talking about. So they've been asked to submit it, which I believe, and I'm going to confirm this, and I can email you after the session, but I believe what that means is that what they submitted will be available to them when they log in to the Learn dot site. So they would be able to log in and go to My Portfolio and then see a copy of what they submitted. So if they brought their mobile device, then they would be able to access it. If they did not have a mobile device and were not able to access what they submitted through the Learn site, then it would be a good idea to remind them in advance of the CVC workshop to bring a copy of what they submitted through the Learn site. And as a worst case, if they didn't bring a copy of their observations and they didn't bring the actual research that they did, hopefully, and I would imagine that they would remember some observations from that research, and they'd be able to share some of what they had learned, because they would have only done the course a couple days before this workshop. So I will confirm with Rob, who manages the Learn site. I'll confirm with him that they will be able to access what they submitted from the My Portfolio function, and then they will be able to access it from their mobile devices. Let me know if that answered your question or if you have any additional questions. So this activity, Discovering Opportunities for Impact, is about identifying social or environmental issues that they feel passionate about or connected to. And throughout, we're going to refer to those social or environmental issues as opportunities for impact. The reason we sort of call it this, opportunities for impact, is that as young leaders, any problem that they see in their community, we want them to see that as an opportunity for them to create an impact. So just know that throughout, they might be referred to as either opportunities for impact or social or environmental issues, but those are the same things. So throughout the program, they're going to be working on a social impact project. And before they can come up with, a solution or a project idea, they need to identify a problem that they're sort of passionate about solving. And so what we're using for the kind of framing of this activity is the SDGs. So the Sustainable Development Goals, you are all very familiar with, I know. So the SDGs are going to form the foundation of a number of parts of the YLP, and so it's great to have them introduced here. The activity is the participants will be divided up into teams of 2 or 3, and the facilitator needs to divide up the 17 SDGs amongst the teams. So you're going to assign, say, 2 SDGs to a team of 3. And as a team, they're going to spend 20 minutes trying to articulate what that SDG looks like in their local community. So if the SDG is access to education, they're going to describe what that issue looks like in their community today. So there's some guiding questions here. What does this issue look like today? Who does it most negatively affect? For each of your assigned SDGs, create a drawing or a 2 to 3 sentence description of the issue today from your group's perspective. So they're going to spend 20 minutes doing that. You can encourage them to think about these issues and their relevance in different types of communities. So, their very local community or their region, and then also thinking about, as a country, what does this look like? So they can think about it at sort of different levels of focus. After those 20 minutes are up, each group is going to present their findings to the rest of the participants. You're going to encourage the young leaders to, really listen to those presentations and make note of issues that sort of catch their attention or something that they're interested in, and might be interested in working on. So, Anne, you're saying the SDGs have been introduced at this point. That is great. So you can just do a little reminder for them, for people who are less familiar. But this is starting to think about, what do the SDGs look like in our community, and also potentially identifying more specific local issues related to those SDGs. And so after those presentations, so going through the SDGs and presenting what they look like in the community. Individually, each person is going to spend 10 minutes reflecting on these 5 questions. So it would be a good idea to have these 5 questions either in a PowerPoint presentation or written down on chart paper. And so they're going to reflect and write their answers in their journal. The questions are really asking, which of the issues do you feel close to you, or do you feel passionate about? So what are the top 3 social or environmental problems that you experience that most negatively affect you personally? What problems do you see around you that most frustrate you? What are the problems that people you love experience the most that frustrate you? So all of these questions are ways for them to think about, what are the issues that are close to me that I might feel passionate about because a loved one faces this issue, or because I see it constantly in my community and I always feel really frustrated about it. So it's important that they actually write down their responses in their journal, because they are going to be developing developing a submission. And the more that they've written down in their journal from this Compelling Vision for Change workshop, the better set up they will be to do that submission. So really encourage them to use their journal and to write notes. And then you can do a 10-minute debrief. So just discussing with the whole room, what were some of the issues that were coming up as most important or meaningful? Are there some issues that you feel more equipped or prepared to address than others? So then you'll move on to 3 activities, I believe it's 3 activities, that have them reflecting personally on their strengths, skills, and passions. And we're doing that because we want them to think about, what strengths, skills, and passions do I have that can be applied to addressing that problem that I'm really passionate about. So this first activity is pride stories. And so I don't know if your mic is working now, Anne, but I wonder if anyone in your group has facilitated pride stories before and wants to share a little bit about that experience. Seems like we can't hear you. No, Anne, we can't hear you. Hi, Assumpta. Peterson, so you have. Also sounds like we can't hear Peterson. Assumpta? Do you want to try unmuting yourself?
Hi.
Hi.
I can be heard. Okay, so about the pride stories, we ask the participants to tell us something that they're very proud of, something that resonates a lot of pride in them. And from the experience we have had, we have had them draw their own skills, their strengths, which is something that they can further, and some of them get strengths and grow them and would like form basis of maybe a solution to create, or a business, or a social entrepreneurial idea that they want to do. Yes.
Great. Thanks. And do you find that they uncover new strengths that they hadn't thought about before by looking at their pride stories?
Yes, actually, most of them look at their pride stories as just common stories, but once they start speaking about them, talking about them, they get to learn new strengths, new skills that they didn't think they knew. So it's an eye-opening opportunity for most of them.
Great. Perfect. Thank you, Assumpta.
Okay.
So that is exactly the goal of the Pride Stories exercise. So it's 30 minutes. And just like Assumpta described, individually, they're going to record an experience, sort of a story that they're proud of. So something that they did or something that they've experienced that they feel very proud of. They're taking 20 minutes to record that story. And then they are going to make comments on the right-hand side. Because you have all facilitated this, or many of you have facilitated this previously, you can feel free, of course, to change the facilitation based on what you have experienced while you are delivering this. So feel free to kind of make adjustments. And the debrief is really, how can you use Pride Stories to develop a sense of your own strengths and skills? Actually, we're going to delete this. They are not doing that. Okay, so Pride Stories is pretty straightforward for most of you, so I'll move through that one quite quickly. This one as well is something that you have likely facilitated, this passions and purpose activity. So this activity is 1 hour long. Again, it's starting with a personal reflection. So they're listing 10 things that they love to do. They can, be any kind of things. They don't have to be work related. So hobbies, pastimes. Then they're going to turn to a new page, and that page is going to be called Passions. They're going to list 3 passions that they came up with in the icebreaker, and then they're going to read through their Pride stories and I try to identify any passions from those Pride stories. And then they're going to transition into trying to think about how could you use those things you love and passions to create impact in the community or generate an income. And so in the facilitator notes, there's a whole example. So ask a volunteer to share something from their list of passions or dependable strengths. Examples, talking on the phone. So jobs could include a sales rep or administrative assistant, receptionist. So the idea is to show, of course, whatever your passions are, whatever you love to do, that there's opportunities to generate an income or to address a community need with that passion. So you're going to try to brainstorm those, and then you will do a debrief. So what surprised you about the ideas of the group that the group came up with for the volunteer? Why might you want to share your ideas with others? This is one that you have all also facilitated, is that correct?
Yes, we have facilitated that one also.
Great. And Anne, were you able to reconnect? Is it working for you now? No, still not working. Okay, no problem. And so we're going to go into the third activity that you have all likely facilitated before as well, which is dependable strengths. Again, this is a 30-minute activity. Your preparation in advance is important. You need to prepare your own dependable strengths story as an example. So make sure that you have that prepared in advance. Okay, so dependable strengths. You are building on the work that that the participants completed in Pride Stories. They're talking about dependable strengths because it's the idea of how do you turn that passion into a sustainable livelihood. Often we struggle to recognize our own strengths, but we're better at recognizing our own limitations. And so this is an opportunity to think about the set of strengths that we have naturally developed. This is really important for the youth leaders, particularly for those that perhaps have not, with this new program, I think those that have not done a lot of work addressing community needs, it'll be really great for them to be thinking about, you know, what dependable strengths do they have, and how can they develop a community impact project that really builds on those strengths, rather than looking at the limitations of either, you know, only being one person and how can you have a significant impact in the community, or looking at the limitation of not having a lot of experience trying to address these types of community needs. So you're going to start out by sharing a personal story that illustrates one of your own dependable strengths. There's an example story. You want it to be an everyday story, not a sort of major event. Then the participants will individually reflect on some of their dependable strengths. They're going to record 2 events in their journal where their strengths were noticed and commented on. And then they're going to do this dependable strengths interview. So I think, you know, this is sort of what you were talking about before, Assumpta, that when they start to talk to one another about these stories that they're sharing, they start to discover more strengths and skills than they even recognized in themselves. So they're going to find a partner that they're comfortable with. One will start by interviewing, asking questions and taking notes, and then they're going to switch. So in advance, it's great if you can write these questions, these guiding questions, on a chart paper, or have them up in a presentation. These are the questions that the interviewer can ask to their interviewee. And they're going to start recording what they hear as strengths, whether they're big or small. At the end of the 5 minutes, they're going to share all of the strengths that they heard during that time, and the person who is telling the story can ask any questions that they want of the interviewer. And then they will switch. So there's a debrief as well. You know, what did you learn about yourselves? What are your dependable strengths? Why is it important to identify your dependable strengths? How can you use this information of dependable strengths? So those 3 activities that we just went through quickly are all 3 from Reach Up, 3 that you are likely very familiar with. And that is how we wrap up day 1. So day 1, as I mentioned at the beginning, is really focused on empowerment and a lot of self-reflection for the young leader on what their strengths, skills, passions are that they can use going forward in their YLP journey. So I'm going to go on to day 2. You can let me know if you have any questions in the chat box. No, okay. Okay, so day 2. So in the second day of the workshop, this is where the concept of compelling vision for change actually gets introduced, and where the participants start developing their compelling vision for change. So this content is all fairly new and might be less familiar to you. So the day starts out with focusing on your opportunity. So they spent time in day one, as we just talked about, doing the activity discovering opportunities for impact. At this point in day two, they're going to start off with a reflection on which of those social or environmental issues do they want to focus on for the rest of the YLP, and more specifically for the rest of the day in the Compelling Vision for Change workshop. So they're going to spend time individually reflecting on all the work that they did in day one. So they're going to think about, what are the passions that I identified? What are my dependable strengths that I identified? What are some of the skills that I identified? And what were those social or environmental issues that we discussed that I felt passionate about? So they're going to spend 5 minutes rereading their notes, and then they're going to identify one or two opportunities for impact that connect most with their passions and purpose. So those opportunities for impact could be something like, waste, or waste reduction, or education, or health, or it could be something much more specific. So it kind of depends on the level of knowledge or level of focus that the young leader has already. And so in their journal, they're going to write those two opportunities for impact at the top of a page. Below that, they're going to write a couple of notes about how their passion and purpose aligns with those opportunities for impact. Then they're going to write, they're going to list some of the strengths that they feel they can use to make change in those areas. So the strengths that they identified in day one, they're going to list some of those strengths that they feel really align with the issues that they've identified. And then finally, they're going to answer this last question. So the idea is for them to think about, 5 years from now, they've been, running a community impact project that is solving that issue that they've just identified. And they're being interviewed by the media, and they're asking, why have you committed the last 5 years of your life to working on this issue? And so it's really getting to the kind of heart of why do they want to pursue that particular problem? And so they're going to write, what would their response be if a journalist asked them that question 5 years down the line? So all of that is individual reflection in their journal. And then the debrief together is that everyone in the room, and so this will take a little bit of time, but everyone in the room is going to share the one or two opportunities that they identified and one or 2 points about their why. So why they feel passionate about it, why they want to pursue it. So the reason that at this point we're starting to have everyone share out the work that they're doing is because this creates an opportunity for people in the room who are passionate about similar issues to start building connections, start building relationships as early on as possible. So on day 2, they do a lot more of having everyone in the room share what they are working on, which will take more time. And so you have to be really conscious of the time that will take, depending on how big your groups are. So the next exercise is, what is a compelling vision? It's 75 minutes. And this is where you're really going to introduce for the first time what a compelling vision for change is, and share some inspiring examples from other young leaders. So this activity, or the facilitator at this point, will introduce what makes a vision compelling and what a compelling vision for change is. So all of that is really described here. A vision statement is a description of the way you hope the world will look in the medium to long-term future. A vision can be personal, organizational, or for a community. Vision statements can serve as a guide for our actions. A compelling vision is a vision that is positive, personal, possible, visual, vivid. So you can read through what all of those mean. As young leaders, it's important that you're able to articulate your compelling vision for change. Being able to craft a compelling vision will help you capture the hearts and minds of the people whose support you need to make the change you seek. And so you're going to introduce sort of the background of what a compelling vision for change is, why it matters, why it's important to young leaders. And then you're going to share videos of compelling visions for change from other social innovators. So you'll see that the video links are not here. The reason for that is so that you can bring in local examples of social innovators talking about their compelling vision. So at this point, I know that some countries have been recording more videos than others. So I'm not sure where Kenya is at, whether you have video content or not. Maybe you can write in the chat if you've been able to record any videos or not. But if you have not recorded any videos of social innovators, oh, you have, okay, great. And those videos that you've recorded, Anthony, are those of DOT participants, or are they of other community members? All our youth leaders who participated in the unconference recorded a video, and they are good. Great. Okay. So that will work for this. So you're going to watch together as a group, you're going to watch 3 videos from social innovators that are talking about their compelling vision for change. So at this point, you want to identify sort of the kind of best possible examples of compelling visions for change. Then once you've watched those videos as a group, individually, the participants are going to choose one of the videos that they just saw and write down their reactions in their journal. So how did the video, or how did the person's compelling vision make them feel? What components of their compelling vision really resonated with them or stuck out to them, and which did not? Then they're going to divide into 3 groups. So each group is going to watch one video again. So if you're using the same videos, they're going to watch one of those videos again. And as a group, they're going to provide feedback on how the young leaders articulated their vision for change. And each group is going to try to provide comments on what worked really well and areas that they feel that the compelling vision could be improved. And the reason that they're doing this is they are practicing giving feedback, constructive feedback, so sort of positively framed feedback, because they're going to be doing that with one another. They're going to be doing that with their peers later in the session. And so we want to give them an opportunity to practice giving feedback in a constructive way that's respectful, because your compelling vision, if you're sharing it, is, it's very early in you developing that, and it's quite personal. And so we want them to have an opportunity to practice giving feedback so that the experience later when they're giving feedback to one another is positive. And Anthony, to answer your question, yes, you can feel free to share the videos with me, and I'm happy to review them. So at this point, they're going to practice giving feedback, and then each group will present their feedback to the rest of the room. So really, what did we see that was really strong about this compelling vision, and what were the areas that we saw that could be improved, and what were some of our suggestions for how those could be improved. This will also help everyone in the room to really deepen their understanding of what a compelling vision for change is and what makes it really strong. They'll get ideas from all the feedback that they hear for how to improve their own compelling vision when they start working on it. So that is the introduction to the compelling vision for change. And then they're going to transition into starting to develop their own compelling vision for change. So this is a multi-part sort of activity, but the whole thing takes 85 minutes. So they're going to start by doing a current state versus future state drawing. So because a compelling vision is one that is visual and something that people can almost see when they hear it, we're starting by having them do a drawing because this is getting that visual thinking out. And if you were following Tanzania on Twitter, they were posting a bunch of pictures of people's current state and future state drawings. So you can get some inspiration from there to see what this will look like. But the exercise, it will take 25 minutes. So the young leader will split a piece of paper into sort of two sides. They're going to draw on one side the way that this issue currently looks in their community. And really in that image, they want to highlight, in that drawing, they want to highlight what is broken or what is wrong. What is the problem that they really see. And then on the other side, they're going to draw the future that they hope to see around that issue. So 10 years down the road, if things went really well and people paid attention to this issue and really cared about solving it, what would be kind of the best possible way that this could look in 10 years? And then below each image, they can write a headline or a caption for their drawing that kind of captures the essence of what they were trying to describe. So everyone is going to do one of those drawings by themselves. And the drawing should be of the issue that they identified at the beginning of day 2 as their top social or environmental issue that they wanted to work on. The debrief is talking about the discussion is really around how big were the participants able to think about what change is possible. So the goal here is really for them to imagine the best possible future. And sometimes people can find that quite challenging when there's someone who maybe sees that there's a lot of problems that are difficult to solve. So the discussion for the debrief is around, how significant of a change is it that you were describing? Do you feel that this change is possible? Is it easy for you or difficult to think about a best possible future? No constraints, like no limitations. Is that easy or difficult for you? And could you have thought bigger about your vision for the future? What would that have looked like? So it's trying to uncover whether there's kind of barriers in the group to thinking about a best possible future. Then they'll move into the next part, which is 15 minutes, and it's developing their draft compelling vision for change. So individually, they're going to take 15 minutes to write down their personal compelling vision for change. And this is based very much on the image that they just drew. They kind of drew their compelling vision for change, but now they need to articulate it. And it's also based on the work that they did in day one about their passion and really being able to articulate why they're passionate about solving this problem. So here, it describes your compelling vision for change should be more than just a vision statement, so a one sentence kind of vision statement. It should include a description of where we are today, tell a story about where we will go in the future, and some reminders that you want to be specific and descriptive so someone hearing your vision knows what you're trying to achieve and why. So through your compelling vision for change, you should answer the following questions. And again, these would be good to have on a chart paper or on a PowerPoint. What is the opportunity for impact you are going to pursue? Tell the story of how you first became aware of this issue and how it has impacted your life or the lives of those around you, in your community, in your family, in your country. Looking 10 years into the future, what is your vision for how you hope this issue will look? What will it take for this vision to be achieved? What do you personally want to pursue? Why do you personally want to pursue this vision? How does this vision connect with your passions and purpose? And describe how you will use your dependable strengths towards accomplishing this vision. So you'll notice as you go through those questions that kind of all of those elements we've touched on in different parts of the workshop so far. And this is really the opportunity for them to bring it together. But it is a draft, and so reminding them that it's not going to be perfect to start with, and that's okay. And they're going to have a lot of opportunity to continue working on it, continue to refine it throughout the rest of the workshop, is a good reminder, because it can be a bit of a writer's block if you think it has to be perfect the first time I write it. That might cause a little bit of writer's block for them. So just remind them that this is a draft. They're just starting out. But also remind them that they should be writing down the vision, because they are going to be sharing it with others and kind of reading it out. And so they'll want to have it written down. Anyone have any questions about this so far, this section, developing your compelling vision? No. Okay. So then the final part of this developing your compelling vision exercise is sharing your vision with others. And this is important because a compelling vision can only really be compelling if someone else is reading it or hearing it, and they're able to be sort of influenced by it. And so practicing sharing their compelling vision for change is a really important thing to do, but this activity will also help them to refine their compelling vision and get it in better shape for when they do their submission. So they're going to spend 30 minutes sharing their vision for change with 3 other people in the room. They're going to find a partner A, so one partner will share their compelling vision for change for up to 1 minute. Partner B will provide feedback on that compelling vision for up to 3 minutes, and then they're going to switch. At the end of both of them providing feedback, they're going to take 2 minutes to make notes about the feedback they received from their partner so that they don't forget it. And this is important so that they can incorporate it into their final submission. So these are very short feedback rounds. As you can see, 1 minute to share, 3 minutes to provide feedback, and then they're switching. And it's important that you try to keep a close eye on the time and keep to that timing. And the reason that's important is because it's more valuable for the young leaders to get 3 perspectives, so to get multiple perspectives from their peers, than it is to do, a 5-minute or 10-minute deep dive on feedback from one person for this particular activity. So we really want to make sure that there's enough time for them to practice presenting their compelling vision 3 times and to get different types of feedback from 3 different people. So I would encourage you, if you're able to have a timer and to have some kind of bell or other noise-making device that you can use to signal to the participants that it's time to switch each time, once the 1 minute is passed and then 3 minutes is passed, so that you don't have to kind of keep interrupting them with your voice, but to just have that signal to them that it's time to switch and to keep them on time. So this could end up taking you a very, very long time if you don't stick to the time. So if you do want to extend any of these timings by even a minute or 2, just try to add up, what that's going to be, and you'll need to make an adjustment somewhere else in the workshop to make up for that time because it is very tight. So after they've shared with 3 different people, they've received feedback, they've made note of that feedback in their journal, they're going to spend 5 minutes directly after that just trying to revise their compelling vision for change based on the feedback that they received. So making some very quick, of course, only 5 minutes, but quick adjustments to their compelling vision based on the feedback that they received. And then the final activity for this section is presenting their vision to the whole group. And so we only have 20 minutes here for this, and I'm not sure, Tanzania was mentioning that their groups are quite large, and so your groups might be bigger than 20 minutes allows for. The idea is to have each participant share their compelling vision for change in under 1 minute. So they would kind of be in a circle, I imagine. They stand up, they share their compelling vision, or they are already standing, they share their compelling vision for change, and then you move on to the next person. So this would not be another feedback session. It's really just an opportunity to present to the whole room. And again, an opportunity for people to hear the compelling visions of others and identify anyone who's working on, who maybe has a similar vision to theirs. And then they can, they would be able to form connections with those people who are passionate about working on similar issues or who have a similar vision to them. If your group is bigger than 20 people, you could split it up into 2 groups and have them sharing at the same time. Or you could add a bit of time to this activity and find time to take away from somewhere else or extend the day a bit more. But just something to think about here, that this is everyone presenting their vision to the group. So moving on to the final activity, or the final sort of section of day 2, which is your role in influencing change. It's a 50-minute section. In advance, as the facilitator, you want to prepare a story of someone who you feel has made a significant impact in the community. So you're going to start by sharing that story. You're going to talk about what impact they've had and how they had this impact. So what did they do that allowed them to create the impact that they did? And you're also going to share why you personally feel connected to or inspired by that person. Then individually, the participants are going to identify someone. So it can be someone in their home, their community, or globally, who they feel creates a positive change. And they're going to have 30 minutes to respond to the following questions in their journal. So who are they? What impact have they had? How did they have this impact? And why do you feel connected to or inspired by this person? So really the same questions that the facilitator answered. On chart paper, it's helpful to have these chart paper, or in a PowerPoint presentation, to have this chart available. This chart goes through different ways that an individual can create change. So as an example, there's political action. So you can create change by through political protests, through campaigning, through lobbying. So political action is one way that people can create change. People can create change by raising awareness. So social media advocacy, storytelling, sharing images. So this chart goes through all different ways that people can create change. And so this can be helpful for answering these questions. So how did they have this impact? After individually writing down in their journals their answers to these questions, you're going to ask 2 to 3 participants to share their reflections. And then you're going to have a discussion with the whole group about the different ways that individuals can influence or create change. So, you know, from those stories, how were people creating change? How were they having this impact? Was it all political action? Was it all about raising awareness? So have a discussion with the group about any common trends they were seeing and how individuals can create change. Then as a group, you're going to categorize the different ways of creating change that are in this chart into those that are direct action and then those that are indirect action. So as the facilitator, you'll have a large chart paper and divide it into sort of 2 sides, direct and indirect, and then go through the different ways of creating change and talk about whether they are direct, you're having a direct influence or an indirect influence. So raising awareness, as an example, social media advocacy is indirect. You're taking actions that, with the goal that they will influence others to make changes in their behavior. So you're going to categorize these different ways of creating change. The reason that you're doing all of this is to help the young leaders think about how they can have a role in creating the compelling vision that they described. So sometimes people are kind of overwhelmed with how big problems are or how complicated they are, and they don't think about the variety of different actions that they can take to make a change. So that's what this activity is trying to get them to think about. How can individuals create change? And then the final part is them spending 15 minutes individually reflecting on what type of role they are going to take in influencing the change they described in their compelling vision. So they're going to think about the story that they told about someone else creating change in the community that they were really inspired by. And now they're going to try to write their own story. So imagining 10 years from now, if someone was saying, I'm really inspired by Anne, who works at DOT, and this is the impact that she's had, they're going to write the story of themselves. So 15 or 10 years from now, what would someone say about them? Or what do they hope that someone would say about them? And they can consider the following questions. How will your role in influencing change build on your dependable strengths, assets, and passions? What qualities, behaviors, or attitudes do you want to be remembered for? Are there other people who will be an important part of your story? If yes, who? How will your role change over time? So they're going to think about their answers to these questions and what story they would want someone to tell about them, about the impact that they've had. So that's the end of the sort of main content for the compelling vision for change. Okay, this kind of idea, innovative ideas, the question would be how they would generate income. Politics is very emotive in Kenya, and it can take over discussions, especially because we will be holding this training immediately after the general elections. Are there other examples we could use for this? Yes. So you could definitely take political action out if you wanted to, if you kind of wanted to avoid that. But the chart has all sorts of different examples of ways that people can create change. So if you're the facilitator and you're preparing a story of someone who has had an impact in the community, maybe you want to share a story of a social innovator who has developed an innovative solution. So they've invented something, they've invented a new, I know that Kenya's, your team is focused on agriculture, or has been doing some work around agriculture. So maybe you want to choose someone who has come up with a new way of doing some agricultural activity that makes it more efficient, and it has had an impact on on the amount of crops that smallholder farmers are able to grow. So you could pick any example that you want as the facilitator, and that will likely influence the conversation as well. And of course, yeah, you as a team can go through really any part of the workshop and customize it to your context. So if taking political action out feels like a good idea for your context, then you can definitely do that. And Anthony, to your kind of first point about how they would generate income, they're in the next, I think in the next section of the YLP, or no, sorry, not in the next section, but in a later section of the YLP, we'll really get deeper into how they can change or how they can turn these ways of creating change into generating income. They have done the Intro to Social Enterprise online course at this point. And so in that, there are some examples of how all of these ways of creating change are, how it's possible to generate some income off of it. But we will do a deeper dive later into that. Just so you know, it will get addressed further. Okay, let me know if you have more comments or questions. That's a really good point that you made. Peterson, when are they going to merge their vision with their project? So they are going to start to actually develop the idea for what the solution is related to their vision as early as unit 3, I believe. When they do their HCD course, their human-centered design course, they will be doing research and ideation around developing solutions for the problem that they have identified in the compelling vision for change. So throughout the YLP, they're going to be adding new elements to their project. This is just the starting point. Anthony, did you have something you wanted to share? No. Okay. Okay, so the final section of the workshop is really just a debrief and discussing the compelling vision for change submission. So this was the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about as well. So there's a debrief to close out the workshop, of course. It is using the same format as the gender discussion. So the idea is to do personal reflection on the answers to these 3 questions. Then they're going to pair up, share their top 2 to 3 reflections with one another. And then they're going to find another group of 2 that will form a group of 4, and they're going to share their top 2 to 3 reflections. As a whole group, they will share out just the top 1 or 2 items that they, they'll share out the top 1 or 2 items, takeaways kind of from the whole workshop. Okay, before I go on to the submission, Assumpta had a question, which is, some of them joined the program with ideas. Does this mean that they will need to change it as they go through the class? So not specifically, but whether they have an idea or not, going through the process of articulating a compelling vision for change is something that is very valuable. So this is an exercise that even late stage social innovators go through, or social entrepreneurs go through, to practice how they can be more convincing and more inspiring to others to become part of the change that they're creating. So this activity is still really valuable, as are all the activities that they'll do throughout the YLP. So as an example, in that HCD course, in the human-centered design course, they might not need to change their idea completely, but they may very well get new information from their user research. You guys have all gone through human-centered design workshops, I think, and you were doing that really intensive one when I was there last. But you'll probably know, based on that experience, that even if you've been working on an idea or a project for a long time, you gain new information that can help you refine your idea, or focus your idea, or improve your idea. So they don't necessarily need to change it completely. That's not the goal, but they should have the mindset that they are open to evolving it as they learn more and gain new information. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think if someone feels that their idea is not as compelling as they would want, they should be allowed to improve it or change it, is what Peterson said. Yeah. And they, I I'm sure when they applied, I think I saw your application, and when they applied, they needed to articulate some kind of idea. And that's exactly the goal, is that as they go through the program, they might see something, or they might learn something that really makes them see the issue that they were working on in a completely different way. And so they want to completely change their idea. And that is also allowed. It will depend on the person and kind of the stage that their idea was at when they were coming in. And I don't know any social innovator who started out and the first program that they applied to, or even the second or third program that they applied to, the idea or the business that they were working on looks exactly the same as it does today. So it's very common for people to evolve their ideas, and we really want to encourage them to do that. Okay, and actually you'll notice throughout the units of the YLP that there's references made back to the Compelling Vision for Change workshop and the Compelling Vision that they submitted at the end of this workshop. And in the courses, it asks them to revisit their compelling vision for change. Is there anything they want to add based on this new information that they have? Is there anything that they want to describe further based on the new information that they have? So it will be called out in many courses to continue to kind of revise your vision, your idea, your project as you go. Okay, so this Compelling Vision for Change submission, did you all have an opportunity to print this out? I'm going to just try to pull it up right now. So the Compelling Vision for Change submission is quite straightforward. It is 5 questions, and they are based completely on what the participants did in the Compelling Vision for Change workshop. You will notice that they are very similar, if not exactly the same, as some of the questions that they were answering during the workshop. And the goal is for them to do as well as possible, of course, on this first submission. So they're very, very closely aligned. So the young leaders are going to write their responses to each of these questions. There's a word count, a suggested word count for each, so that they don't submit something that's 20 pages long. Sorry. So you can go through these questions with them at the end of the Compelling Vision for Change workshop, so that they know the questions that they're going to need to answer, and also so that they're able to see that they're really well prepared to submit this. Once they do submit their responses, you are going to be marking them against the Compelling Vision for Change rubric. So a question to all of you who are able to put notes in the chat box. Have you seen the Compelling Vision for Change rubric already? Okay, well, hopefully you have seen this before. And if not, it's a good idea to take a look at it. This is not the format that you will see it in. You will see it in the Learn Dot platform. In the Learn Dot platform, you are able to actually mark the submissions of your program participants against this rubric. So it's built right into the platform itself. I'm just showing you here because it's a little bit easier to scroll through. So the idea of a rubric is to have a standardized way that we're all across all the countries that we're assessing submissions. This is the first rubric that we're going to be using for the YLP. And so there's lots of feedback probably that your teams will have once you have actually started using it to mark submissions. So I want everyone to know that there is some flexibility in taking that feedback and incorporating it into the rubric. We want a reasonable number of people to be able to pass this submission. We don't expect that this should be so challenging that 50% of your group is dropping out or unable to pass. So if we get to a point where all of you are marking the submissions and you're realizing that way more people than you expected are not not passing the submission, then we're going to need to review the rubric, because that's a rubric problem. So basically, the rubric goes over or includes competencies from the DOT competency framework, and then it gives 3 levels that might describe the completion of that competency in the submission. So as an example, and this is one that Rwanda had feedback on. So communication articulates thoughts and ideas effectively for a target audience. So because this is a written submission, they're thinking about this in written form. And the question to you as you're reviewing a submission is, are these thoughts and ideas organized effectively for a target audience? So a needs developing would be thoughts and ideas are not organized, it's unclear to understand. A developing, which is a 1, would be thoughts and ideas are somewhat organized and somewhat clear, needs clarification and more work. And a 2, a developed, would be that the thoughts and ideas are clear and organized. So you would give it either a 0, a 1, or a 2. Pretty straightforward. But what you'll notice is there are not actually that many competencies that are being marked for this submission. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 competencies. Because this is one of the earlier submissions, if they are if they get a 1 on, say, 3 of those 6, 3 of those 6 competencies, it drops their score down quite a bit. And so we just we want to make sure that that the rubric makes it possible for them to pass. For people who are even still doing some work on developing these competencies, are able to pass into the next section because it's the first submission, and they're going to be working on these competencies more in later sections of the YLP. So this is the rubric. You're using it to mark the submission. The submission is very straightforward, 5 questions, very similar to what they've done in the workshop. So it should set them up to do very well on the submission, hopefully. But as you are using the rubric for the first time, we really want to hear your feedback. And so please make sure that you sort of make note of any thoughts that you have about whether the rubric needs more clarity, whether it's marking the right things, whatever feedback you have, make sure that you make note of it and feed it into the HQ program development team. So Christine, Emily, and Roy. Do you guys have any questions about the submission? The submission or the rubric itself? No questions? Okay. And do you have any overall questions about the Compelling Vision for Change workshop? How are you feeling? Yeah, not now. You don't have any questions for now, but believe that you might have some later after going through it, for sure. So if you do have questions before you deliver the workshop, you can feel free to send me an email. I think you all have my email address, but I'll put it in the chat as well. Okay, Assumpta, take you through the rubric from top to bottom. Sure. Okay, so the first competency group is 21st century skills, or sorry, personal empowerment, and the behavior group is 21st century skills. So we have creativity, innovation, cultivates openness to new ideas and perspectives. So needs developing does not consider new ideas, only mentions own perspectives and not thinking of others. Developing considers new ideas and mentions others' perspectives, but not fully. And developed fully considers new ideas and mentions others' perspectives, is open to other ideas. And communication is the other one here that I just went through. Oh, I can hear someone speaking very quietly. Anne, were you? Hi. Oh, you're very quiet, but I can kind of hear you.
You can hear us finally.
Yes, there we go.
Oh, we thought our
Did you have a question? Oh, now it's gone again. Oh, well. Okay, so the next competency group is global citizenship. So demonstrate social responsibility. Identifies instances and examples of global injustice and disparity. So needs developing doesn't identify any examples. Developing identifies only one example, and developed identifies two or more detailed examples of global injustice and inequality. So another important note is about this rubric is all of the young leaders will have access to this rubric before they submit their compelling vision for change. And we've asked them before they submit, we ask them to review the rubric so that they know exactly what they're being marked on. So they should, and you may also want to go through the rubric at the end of the Compelling Vision for Change workshop, but they should be able to see what they're going to get marked on and know exactly what they need to include in their vision, in their Compelling Vision for Change submission, based on the rubric. So additional skills, there's communication skills. This is writing, style, tone, and conventions.
Excuse me, Ellen, do you have a question?
Ooh.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi. Go ahead.
Hi, we have a question, Ellen.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yep.
Can you hear us?
Oh, she had muted herself.
Oh. Ellen, we have a question. Can you hear us? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
So there's this part on global citizenship, which will be awarding them marks for that. And yet we have training for global citizenship later on. So how do we evaluate them on that at this point? Yet for global citizenship, the training is later.
Perfect. Yes, that's a great question. So this particular behavior under global citizenship is something that this particular behavior is something that they will have. Sorry, I just had to mute you. So this one, they should have enough information to be marked on. And that's because when they're talking about the SDGs and they're talking about the global issues and then applying them to their local communities and identifying injustices or inequalities, which are really the community, the social or environmental problems that they identified in the first day of the workshop, they should be able to include those in their submission. So perhaps it's adjusting the language of this one a little bit, but global citizenship is the behavior group. So under that behavior group, there are some behaviors that will get introduced in courses other than global citizenship itself. Does that make sense?
Yes, to some extent.
Is there a particular part of the behavior that you're concerned about them being able to demonstrate?
Yes.
We can still hear you if you just want to speak. Is there a part of the behavior that you're worried they won't be able to demonstrate?
We're not really sure for now.
Okay.
So I think the most important thing that the facilitators are aware that those issues, even during the training, we have to bring those issues forward. The assignment, they are able to highlight. So it will be upon us to help them understand that, miss out during assessment.
Right. Okay, that's a good point, because in this behavior,
Yes.
the goal is not to focus on the global part. It's more about the injustice or inequality part. So I can ask for this to be edited so that they remove the global injustice and disparity and have it focus on just examples of injustices or inequality, which could be in their local community as well. Would that help?
Sure, let's see.
Oh, sorry. So the question was, if we removed global from this description and made it identifies 2 or more detailed examples of injustice and inequality, would that help? Because the focus of this is not the global part. It's just identifying injustices and inequalities.
I think at this point, that would be good, so that we will not confuse them later.
Okay, perfect. So we will edit that. I'm just going to make a note. Okay.
Let's use that.
Okay, I'm going to mute you guys because there's feedback. Okay. But if you have other comments, you can unmute yourself again. Communication skills is writing. Now, this was where Rwanda had comments. So Rwanda felt that this shouldn't be marked, that the idea of marking sort of grammar and spelling and the clarity of the writing was not an effective thing to mark because they were concerned about the language of the submission and things like that. I suggested that we include this for now. So this is marking the writing is appropriate for the audience. There are few to no grammatical and spelling errors. The writing is clear and understandable. So your submissions, the young leaders can submit in whatever language you want them to, is my understanding. So it doesn't necessarily need to be English. And the reason that we are evaluating the writing is further along in the program, they are going to be writing or communicating in a written manner with important stakeholders and people that they're trying to get support from for their idea. They'll, send emails or create blog posts or write for their website. And so, being able to edit their writing is an important skill. We do suggest to them before they submit their compelling vision for change to have it edited by someone. If they aren't confident that they can edit their own submission, we encourage them to have someone else read it and look at it and edit it with them as well. And that's totally fine as long as they can kind of identify that they need support on this and they get that support. I think that that's completely okay. So we have this writing in. Okay, you're concerned that will open up people doing the assignments for them. Well, I think that someone could do the assignment for them whether we tell them to have it edited or not. We don't really have any way of knowing that they submitted it. But I guess it does to some degree. I feel, this is sort of my personal feeling, but we can certainly discuss this as a group once the first round of submissions come in. I sort of feel like you are going to be able to do a combination of their participation in the workshop and knowing how actively and how well they participated in the workshop, as well as looking at their submission. And if all of a sudden the submission looks completely different than the way that they participated in the workshop, maybe that's a bit of a red flag to follow up with that person. But I don't think that, I sort of feel like us asking them to get it edited doesn't create any new opportunity that they didn't already have to have someone submit for them. But we can, I'm very interested to hear if you guys have concerns of that once the submissions start coming in. If you're concerned that people are getting someone else to do the submission for them, then we should discuss with all the countries how we might like how we might prevent that from happening. Okay, so then the last three is under social impact. One is identify and situate problems. So determine where opportunities exist for new solutions. This is really that activity around identifying opportunities for impact. It's exactly what we've asked them to do. So does not identify where opportunities are for new solutions, identifies one opportunity for new solutions but needs more detail, clearly identifies two or more opportunities for new solutions. So this is around opportunities, again, being social or environmental problems where they could work and come up with new solutions. Or submitting someone else's idea, especially those who could not get into the program. Okay, I'm seeing your comments here in the chat box, and I think that we should send these thoughts through to Christine, probably, although she's on vacation, but she might be able to think through that at a broader level, because I understand your concern, but I'm not sure how we prevent it at this point. So I can send some of those notes to Christine and Roy and copy you guys to see what they come back with. Okay, so the other task is identify and situate problems, understand local social challenges in the context of regional, national, or global policies and priorities, such as the SDGs. So in this case, in particular, they are asked to, in the submission, they're asked to respond to the question, are you looking to address this issue at a local, regional, or global scale? What local, regional, or global policies and priorities, such as a sustainable development goal, are connected to this issue? Be as specific as possible. So this is asking them to identify the sustainable development goal or other regional policies and priorities to the issue that they're working on. So it is called out specifically in the submission, so they should answer it in the submission, and then they'd be able to be marked on this. And they can build off of the work that they did in the workshop around identifying or talking about the SDGs, and they can tie the issue that they're working on to the SDGs and get full marks for this. So that one should be sort of easily covered off because there's a question in the submission and they talked about it in the workshop. And then this is the final one, which is define vision for growth, recognizing opportunities for both deep and broad scaling. But in the description of these, it's quite specific. So does not define a vision for growth. Vision is short-term and is limited. Loosely defines a vision. Vision could be better defined and longer term, or clearly defines a vision for growth. Vision is long-term and sustainable. So this is really around the way that they are articulating their vision and whether they're thinking, you know, very short-term, very long-term, whether it's clear or unclear, whether it is well-defined or not well-defined. So that is the whole rubric from top to bottom. So these rubrics are, it's, like I said, it's sort of a starting point and a bit of a test to see if this works for you guys and works to evaluate submissions. And it may be that we need to sort of change this approach, but we are testing it with the first submission and really look forward to all of your feedback. And I will send an email to Roy and Christine about the concerns around someone else submitting someone else's work as part of the submissions. Are there any other questions or kind of final comments before we get going? We're 3 minutes over, so I'm just conscious of the time. Okay, great. No more questions from that group. Anyone else have any questions? Samta Peterson. Okay, great. So like I said, I put my email in the chat. If you have any questions before you deliver the workshop, you can feel free to send me a note. If you have feedback after you deliver the workshop, we'll definitely be collecting all of that and incorporating it into the next round. So I really look forward to hearing what you guys have to say, and good luck with rolling out the YLP. I know you're kind of in the thick of it, so I hope that all goes very well for you. Natasha, did you have anything to say before we head off? We're not able to hear you for some reason. That's okay. Well, thanks everyone for making it out this morning or this afternoon for you guys. Sorry, and taking the time to join the training. The link will be available afterwards, and yeah, that should be it. So thank you all. Enjoy your day too. Bye everyone.